Good luck, everybody. Have a great debate. Go ahead, Liz.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Sarin Milner, President of the League of Women Voters of the Montclair area. And on behalf of the League and our sponsors, Montclair Local and Aging in Montclair, it is my privilege to welcome you to this extraordinary forum for the candidates of mayor and city council of the city of Montclair. Normally, this event would have been live in person and open to the public, but due to the current situation, we are doing this as a live web broadcast, recorded broadcast live on channel 34 and on the township's YouTube station. It will be recorded in its entirety for rebroadcast on channel 34 at several times before the May 12th election and is available for streaming on YouTube at your convenience. The League believes it's crucial for the citizens of Montclair to hear the views of their candidates, and I thank them very much for being here tonight. To my knowledge, we are the first league in New Jersey and possibly even the United States to host a live candidate forum online with the candidate's moderator and all the other participants appearing from their homes. And now I would like to welcome our moderator for the evening from the League of Women Voters of Maplewood and South Orange, Michelle Bobrow. Michelle?
Thank you, Liz. I'm delighted to be here tonight, and I welcome the candidates and appreciate their participation. The format of this forum mirrors the election choices Montclair voters will have. First, we will hear from the 5 councilor-at-large candidates, of which the voters will select 2 to represent them. Then we will hear from the 7 people running for the 4 individual wards. Each voter will be able to vote for their 1 ward candidate. And we will finish, our grand finale will be the 2 candidates for mayor. You will choose one of them to be your mayor for the next 4 years. The questions tonight have been selected by the sponsors from those submitted by the public to Montclair Local, and the order of the response will be randomized. The candidates have not been shown the questions in advance. Each candidate will have 1 minute to make an opening statement. Then all candidates, except for the 1 unopposed candidate in Ward 4, will be asked questions and will have 1.5 minutes to respond. If candidates go over time, a timer will sound and we will ask the candidates to immediately conclude their remarks. Are we ready? Thank you very much. We're going to start now with the opening statement from the candidates. They were chosen at random, and this is their speaking order. Carmel Lochman, Bob Russo, James Cotter, Peter Yacobelis, and Roger Terry. And now we will hear from Carmel Lochman.
Good evening. I am an independent candidate not associated with either side. I am a fiscal conservative, pragmatic problem solver, trained in risk analysis with an MBA in finance from NYU. I have served for 4 years on the Montclair Planning Board. I have worked on the master plan, various zoning ordinances, and significant redevelopment plans. I have consistently represented the interests of residents in my review of over 50 development applications. 2 of my opponents have no local government experience, and 2 have served but need to let fresh, energetic voices participate. Most importantly, I am the only candidate with financial expertise needed in a post-pandemic world, where all indications are that there will be significant decline in municipal revenue, state and federal aid. Budgets will be strained. Careful financial analysis will be needed to make hard decisions on budget cuts, funding priorities, and alternative revenue sources. I have the proven experience, dedication, and energy to serve Montclair with integrity and independence, during this unprecedented time.
Thank you. Bob Russo, please.
Yes, I'm your current council member at large, working from home, doing a lot of Zoom for my students at Montclair State, as many people are. I hope you're all staying safe and well. I'd like to review the accomplishments of the current council majority, which I served with over the last several years. We've reduced our debt, we've achieved financial stability, lower tax rate, the last 2 terms, a AAA rating. All of this has enabled us to do the things that we want to do, the progressive agenda we've had of protecting our most vulnerable residents, our seniors, our working families, our tenants, and our students. For the first fair rent control ordinance in Montclair's history, we had a commitment to affordable housing, giving preference to Montclair residents. We have labor harmony through longer multi-year contracts with our township municipal employees. This is leading to better services and more stable management during the next years. Even this time of crisis, we have definitely got better management for Montclair through our multiple year contracts. I'm just offering my services to Montclair once again as a professor of public administration and your only incumbent counselor at large standing for re-election. Thank you for your continued confidence in my work.
Thank you. James Cotter.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for setting up this forum. I hope everyone is safe and well during this public health crisis. I've lived in Montclair for 32 years. I have 2 children who attend Watchung Elementary School, and I am a teacher at Columbia High School, an institution whose demographics, socioeconomic, and educational challenges mirror those of Montclair. I have a long history of service and leadership in Montclair as a committee member, community organizer, volunteer, fundraiser, and public advocate. I have lived in every ward of Montclair as a renter, a landlord, and as a homeowner, so I am intimately familiar with the challenges of Montclairians across the township. I will be a new voice and offer a fresh perspective on issues that are important to us, including overdevelopment, affordability, inclusion, and support for our public schools. I bring progressive values, a spirit of collaboration, and a deep and abiding love for Montclair and all that our community stands for. I would be humbled to serve my hometown. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. Peter Jacobellis.
Thanks, everybody. I first want to acknowledge the suffering of so many in our community. I want to give my blessings to the friends and family of the residents we've lost. And I want to recognize our first responders and medical professionals who are the real heroes. My fiance, Ben, and I chose Montclair because it was a walkable, bikeable community where we can live our commitment to a sustainable lifestyle. As an LGBT family, we knew Montclair welcomed diversity. We were drawn to the architecture and beauty, rich community life. I'm running for council because so many of those attributes are under threat. Lack of affordability is threatening the diversity we cherish. Overzealous development is threatening the character of the town. Our school system is not delivering an equitable education to all students. And as we struggle to preserve what needs preserving, we're not doing enough to modernize, prepare, and adapt for the challenges of the future. Anyone I've worked for, including Governor Cuomo, will tell you that I'm a stuff done kind of person who knows how to innovate, collaborate, and lead. And that's what I hope to bring to our local government. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger Terry.
Thank you to the host, the League of Women Voters, for this opportunity to stand before you tonight. I've lived in Montclair my entire life, and I've been serving our community almost my entire adulthood. From my earliest days as a patrolman, police department, to my days as a deputy chief, service to the community has always been important. I've always worked for the well-being of the township residents. My experience in emergency management will be an asset as we fight the COVID-19 pandemic. Our people are resilient, and I know we will come out of this stronger as a community. My previous tenure on the council, my team building skills will be able to guide as I work to move Montclair forward with accessibility, affordability for senior citizens, renewable energy sources to protect our environment, and safe rent control measures to bridge the class divide. I, Roger Terry, promise to bring accountability, transparency, and to my role as a counselor. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, the first question we are going to ask of these candidates is, You ready? As an at-large candidate, how do you see your role as distinct from the mayor or ward council persons? We'll start with Mr. Terry.
An at-large candidate represents the whole community. I've done that in the past as a deputy chief as in the township of Montclair. I've been in every corner of this community, been well respected. I will support the mayor and the rest of the council in my duties as a councilor at large. I've also done this before. I know what it takes. I know what it takes to be transparent, honest, and have accessibility and accountability to what I'm doing as a councilor at large. Thank you.
Ms. Lockman.
I view the councilor at large role as, in the sense, a support role to the ward councilors and the mayor and the mayor. In my particular skill set is doing research, and I'm kind of a policy wonk. And I would give those skills would be helpful to the ward people as they have to deal directly with their constituents. What I've noticed from being a participant in meetings at the council and talking with other councilors is that the first line of defense is the ward people. Your constituents go to you and they ask you questions. They don't really go to the councilor at large as the first person they speak with. But I would be there for the ward people to help them, to give them research in topics that may come up, and to support their points of view when I see that it's also my point of view. I'm an independent candidate, so I can voice my points of view and I don't have to adhere to the party line, the slate. So that's what I view the role as.
Thank you. Mr. Russo.
Council person in the first ward, originally serving years ago as first ward councilman that Councilman Hurlott serves now. So I know the role of the ward council people. They're on the front line dealing with complaints about everything on the streets within that ward. The at-large council people serve in a general capacity, looking at the whole town's interests and being supportive of ward council people. And what I've often done, working with Councilor Schlager in particular, where I live in the second ward, is help her when there's a need to get something done on the street in the second ward. My role at large for the last couple of terms now has been to support the mayor. I was deputy mayor for a few years, to support the mayor and the council at large, doing what Montclair needs done on a mutually interest basis. You can't look at just one ward or the other. And I've had a history in Montclair of carrying both the first ward that I was councilman in and the fourth ward. So the north end and the south end of town have been supportive of my past work because I tried to be responsive to all parts of town. That's what the councilor at large really needs to be looking at, the whole town's interests, and also work with the ward council people.
Thank you. Mr. Iacobellis.
Yeah, so I see it as being everybody's councilman. And I think it's an incredible opportunity, and I agree with Bob in terms of it's really important to be supporting the individual ward candidates, but you're also supporting the mayor as well. But the most important thing is the connection with the community. So I want to be a different kind of councilor at large, someone that the constituents and the citizens of this township feel like they can reach out to, call me on my cell phone, text message me on Facebook, and I will help connect them to the services that they need. My first job out of college was in Hillary Clinton's Senate office in New York City. And the first job I did in that office was constituent services, where we answered the phones and we listened to what constituents needed. And we routed them to the federal, to the state, or to the local agency where they could get the support that they were looking for. So that's the kind of council member I'll be, somebody that anyone in town can pick up the phone or message and connect with. I'll hear them. I'll carry their voice to the issues that we have before the council.
Thank you. Mr. Cotter. Mr. Cotter?
In this field, in that I have lived in every ward of Montclair. I have been, like I said, a renter, a homeowner, a landlord. So I'm intimately familiar with issues that impact all Montclairians. And I have to say that ward issues are Montclair issues. Development impacts every ward. taxation impacts every ward, pedestrian safety, traffic. I want to make sure that I am an advocate for all Montclairians. We live in an incredibly diverse community. There are many voices to amplify. And something else I want to bring to the council is a sense of inclusion. Many Montclairians feel divested of their local government. And I think that we should be able to leverage the expertise of all Montclairians, their experience, their values, to solve the big problems that we're going to face in the aftermath of this COVID-19 crisis. I think I am that kind of collaborator, the kind of person that can bring people together to solve problems. My political experience comes from my neighborhood association, and we are a multi-ethnic, multiracial, age experience across the board. To collaborate with my neighbors here on Clover Hill Place has been an extraordinary experience, and one that I would like to replicate sitting on the council. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Now perfect timing. The next question. In 2017, Montclair Council voted in support to develop a dedicated senior center for the 7,000 plus older residents of Montclair, but that has yet to happen. How would you hasten this process so that this becomes a reality for this growing constituency? And what do you see as the council's role in the operation and funding of a senior center? We'll start with Mr. Cotter.
Thanks for that question. My mother lives in town. I won't reveal her age, but she is a senior here aging in Montclair. And her number one issue is affordability. And a senior center, while a great idea, right now we have an incredible challenge in front of us, and that is to deal with the loss of revenue that's surely to come as a consequence of this coming economic crisis. So we're going to have to find creative ways, innovative ways to include seniors and their needs in that process. But I do have to say that a community's response to this crisis is in some way emblematic of the kind of people we are. And because we value people of all generations in Montclair, I want to assure seniors that the program, the activities, and the kind of support that you have come to expect will be protected when I sit on the council. It'll be a privilege for me to offer that kind of empathetic leadership crisis is going to require. Again, inclusion is very important to me. All people in Montclair deserve a voice on the council, and I hope to amplify that for seniors in my term. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Terry.
Yes, thank you. In 2008, I advocated for a senior center in the township of Montclair. We don't have that yet. If you take a look around at the towns around us, surrounding towns, most of them have senior and youth centers. So the seniors have an opportunity to work together with the young people. Unfortunately, we do not have that. We need to have accessible facilities for our seniors and have a place to leave for them after they're selling their houses. Many of the friends of mine do not live in Montclair anymore. They would like to live in Montclair, but they're not because Montclair is not affordable and we don't have senior facilities. Infrastructure that helps them, safety and affordability. This will help them to stay instead of leaving. I've worked with seniors my entire life, and hopefully that somehow or another we'll be able to bridge that gap that's lacking for senior housing in the township of Montclair. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lockman.
First ward, and I was there for 15 years. Then, as my mother started to age, I decided I would buy a multifamily house in the 4th ward, and my mother moved in with me. She had her apartment on the first floor. I was on the second, had a tenant on the third. It was a nice arrangement. However, I saw that the lack of socialization from being on her own was such a bad thing, very detrimental to her mental health. And I see that with other senior people that I know, that unless you're with people and you're participating in group activities, having meals together, you just kind of go into this kind of nebulous world mentally. So I think the senior center is so important from that point of view, that the seniors can stay and they can make new friendships if they're moving from someplace else, as my mother was. They can participate in intellectual activities. I've been to the mill. I've been to they have groups who are singing. They have all kinds of classes. All that is a wonderful opportunity for our seniors. What's happening now, though, is that the United Way building is being converted to a senior center. And that plan is well underway. It's being reviewed by the zoning board in early May. It seems like it'll be a wonderful restoration of the building, and it's being specially adapted so that seniors can have handicapped entranceways, parking nearby, and I think that'll be a big plus to the town.
Thank you very much. Mr. Russo.
Yes, I'm glad this question has been asked because for many years, Roger Terry, when he was council member, had advocated a senior center. And I've been advocating as the senior member of the council to have a senior center. Hopefully, we're going to have one soon. But before that could happen, we did dedicate money. And we know one of our sponsors tonight is AIM. Aging in Montclair knows that we dedicated money to have at least a hub for senior activities at the Salvation Army. So our council has dedicated more resources towards senior activities than any other council in the past. And when Roger Terry, my running mate, was on the council, he advocated a senior center. It didn't happen then. It's going to happen. We're on our way towards it, and I think it's an essential, important thing that we need to do for seniors. Now, just on this topic of seniors, so many of our seniors live in multifamily housing. There's so many are tenants. And what we just did was to try to help seniors by passing the first rent control ordinance in Montclair history. We now have something that we can build upon to protect seniors so they can still continue to live in Montclair if they're in an apartment. So this is something our council just did recently. We've been working on this for a number of years. We finally got it done. And I think it's something that seniors can look forward to having some protection for housing in Montclair. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Iacobellis.
Yeah, look, aging in place is a priority for me. It's certainly personal. When my parents were deciding where they were going to retire from Long Island, they looked at New Jersey, around here to live by us, and they looked at Delaware and Pennsylvania. And because of the taxes here, they decided to go to Delaware. So now I only get to see my mom 4 or 5 times a year instead of living close to each other. So it's personal to me. It means a lot to me. Look, what I heard is we haven't been able to get it done. So my question is, if we haven't been able to get it done in good times when there's a budget surplus, what makes anyone think that the people who are in power are going to be able to get it done in difficult times? So I'm disappointed that it hasn't been prioritized over the last few years when there is a budget surplus. So that's something that voters should ask about. Look, affordability is a big deal for me in town. The lack of a grocery store is a big deal. When I was on my listening tour before the COVID virus struck, I remember seniors in the different senior centers telling me the issues they were having in terms of transportation. It's something that's really close to my heart to want to solve for them. I had a woman break my heart just telling me she just wants to be able to go somewhere by pantyhose and for it to not be a whole ordeal. So I think there's a lot more we can do, not just fund a senior center, but also look at the transportation services, modernize that. I have an idea in terms of doing a hop-on, hop-off bus that goes regularly around town. So every 30 minutes, the bus is going to arrive at the senior center, and it's going to take you to Acme, and it's going to take you to the post office, and Whole Foods. So lots of ideas. Thanks for the question.
Thank you very much. Now, switching gears a little bit, what is your opinion on the major redevelopment which has taken place in recent years and caused increased density in downtown Montclair? Would you support zoning changes to lessen the density? What is the resolution to the lack of parking caused by this density? And we'll start with Mr. Yacobelis.
Sure, thanks for that question as well. So when it comes to development, the way I think about this is we need to flatten the development curve. Look, you think about all the units that are in the pipeline that have been approved already. I think we need to let those all come online, digest, and see what happens in terms of the impacts on the services in town, on the infrastructure in town. What's it going to do to response time for police and fire? How many kids are actually going to be in the schools? What's the pressure that it's going to put on our water, sewer, trash removal, recycling systems? All it needs to be thought about. So I want to flatten the curve. I'm not against development, but I think we need to just sort of take a breath when it comes to that. Parking is a really big deal. It's the number one issue I hear about. I would say first and foremost, more variances on big development projects in town. Let's not make assumptions about the kind of habits residents are going to have. Although Montclair is a walkable and bikeable town, people like their cars. They still like to drive to Costco and Target. And the other thing I'd say about development in town is it has to be in line with the character. What I said in the opening statement, one of the main reasons we moved to Montclair was because of the incredible charm and character of this community. And you see monstrosities like the Sienna or Valley and Bloom going up, which do not mimic the character that people really like about this town. So we have to have much more rigorous standards around development.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cotter.
Thank you for the question. Montclair has been under construction for 10 years. Everywhere you look, we're putting up a new development, a new high-rise, a new building. Again, I come to the political process through my neighborhood association. For the last 5 years, we have attended every meeting, every planning board meeting, every session, every visioning workshop to see if we can get a thoughtful, humane development down at Lackawanna Plaza. We really have to start to hold accountable developers accountable to residents, to the needs of residents. All projects have to align with the to create walkable, sustainable, and vibrant centers here in Montclair. None of our projects should put undue burdens on our infrastructure, on pedestrian safety, on traffic, any of the quality of life issues that Montclairians deserve. And finally, development has to be thoughtful. Thoughtful development is smart. Thoughtful development is sustainable. Thoughtful development thinks of residents first. I'm not anti-development, but I do think that we have to take a really long look and take a pause and think about how our developers, how are they impacting the daily lives of Montclairians. And very specifically down in Lackawanna, we need to demand a full-service supermarket, not a legal, but a full-service supermarket that is both walkable and accessible to all Montclairians.
Thank you. Mr. Terry. Mr. Terry?
Thank you. There's development in this entire region. If you take a look at Bloomfield, if you take a look at West Orange, some of the towns around us, Montclair is in the middle of an urban-suburban region. So nothing against that people want to come here, and we should be happy that people do want to come here and live in the township of Montclair. But I truly agree with smart development that overdevelopment, your resources, your schools, your fire department, the police department, that you make sure that the traffic is supported by the streets. We're very fortunate here that many of our developments live right here in town or in the region. They're not living like throughout the whole state or some other state away, where we can sit down at the table, communicate with them. And that's what I'll do, sit down and hold their feet to the fire to make sure that whatever is built in the township fits in the township of Montclair. And also, we want to stick to that 20% affordable housing for any new construction that is built. I do believe in more bicycle, hopefully pedicycle, hopefully more. We do have a lot of cars around, and that's unfortunate. The traffic problem is horrendous at times, but I would work on that. along with the different departments in town, that the problem would be solved. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Russo.
Winding down development. We've had a lot of developments, some of them good, some I've been opposed to. But over the last 10 or 15 years, we started with the Haynes building that was vacant for 15 years. When I was mayor, we finally got that done. A lot of these developments are initiated through people coming in and wanting to make money. Well, we've got to make sure they're fitting Montclair's needs. And one of the things I wanted to say, it has to do with parking. When you look at the Crescent Deck downtown near Church Street, that was built when I was mayor. That's the example of fitting into the community that it's in. And we have 2 more decks coming up. We've been working on getting parking under control in Montclair. So we're going to be seeing 2 more decks soon. I just want to make it clear that parking has been an issue for very, very many years. We've tried to attack it with decks. We really got to get people out of their cars. We got to get people to bike and walk more. We have to have people really not use as many cars. And if we get cars on electric, which is what I've been pushing for years, electric and hybrid cars will help us reduce our carbon footprint. One last point is that one of the reasons we have been able to somehow control taxes, which used to go up 5 and 10% a year years ago, it's down to a 1% average per year municipal tax because we've had some reasonable development, which has given us a little more rateable base to help protect our taxpayers that have been living here for years. It's a real careful balance. It's a difficult thing. I'm for winding down development, get things done that are on the boards now, but we need some development to maintain our taxes.
Thank you. Last prepared question is, Montclair property taxes are some of the highest in Essex County. Due to the COVID-19 health crisis and the resulting economic downturn for both Montclair businesses who have had to shutter their businesses and property owners who have lost their jobs, do you foresee a tax shortfall? If so, can it be made up, and where would the municipal cuts, if any, be made? We'll start with Mr. Russo.
Hi, hello?
Mr. Russo.
No, you missed me for the question on development.
Oh.
I did?
You did.
Oh,
Okay, there's so much to say about development in Montclair. I don't know where to start. Just a couple of points. Mr. Russo just talked about how the development has brought in tax revenues. Many of our developments have been gotten a tax reprieve, in a sense. They're developed under pilot programs. Under a pilot program, I find it, unconscionable that 95% of the taxes that come out of this development go towards the municipality, 5% go towards the county, and none goes towards the school system. That's where, in reality, the school usually gets 55% of our tax base. The other thing, just talking about Lackawanna Plaza. I voted against Lackawanna Plaza plan for a variety of reasons. We were hanging our hat on the fact that a third-party valet parking company would be managing the parking. I believed it would be a traffic nightmare. We were ceding public space, in my view, to private companies by getting rid of the underpass that goes to the parking lot. On the other hand, there's been a lot of development in Montclair that has brought jobs. It has enlivened our downtown, and it has brought some affordable housing. I agree with Mr. Terry. We need to stick to our 20% affordable housing. But you can't curtail development if you expect to have affordable housing. It's a supply and demand issue. You have to lessen the affordable housing costs, you have to have more units. And I believe that the development that we have, some of it has been wonderful. I think the Walnut area is great, and much to be said on the topic.
thank you very much. I'm so sorry. Now, again, the last question is, Montclair property taxes are some of the highest in Essex County. Due to the COVID-19 health crisis and the resulting economic downturn for both Montclair businesses who have had to shutter their businesses and property owners who have lost their jobs, do you foresee a tax shortfall? If so, can it be made up? And where would municipal cuts, if any, be made? And Mr. Russo.
Yes, one of the things we've done over the last few years is stabilize our finances. We're in very good shape, having our debt paid down by $60 million, an AAA, AAA rating to borrow money. We'll be able to do things much better today than we would have 8 years ago. So we're in a good position to deal with financial problems. However, we're all going to face a crisis because the national government is not giving the kind of aid to municipalities that it must do. You may have seen Governor Cuomo the other night talking about it, Governor Murphy of New Jersey talking about it. The federal government has to give municipalities much more aid to continue our programs and continue our services. We're going to try not to make cuts. Hopefully, we can deal with this because we have multi-year contracts with our employees, which is going to cause us to have a much more stable financial picture for the future. So we're in a good position, but it's going to be a crisis for a number of years. We're going to have to deal with this. And taxes in Montclair, yes, are high. And one of the ways we can deal with that is by consolidating and regionalizing. The whole thing that I've always been proud of is when I was mayor, we instituted the Montclair Glenridge Fire Services contract, where they give us $700,000 and they save $1 million in Glenridge. That's called shared services, regionalization. That's the only way towns, municipalities are going to survive in the future, is to regionalize and share services. So we've got to look ahead to that type of policy. I just hope we can keep any cuts to a minimum, but it's going to depend on what the state and federal government does to help us get through this terrible crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yacobelis.
So my position is we need to plan for cuts now. I think that, look, we're at almost 10% unemployment as a country. So we should look back to 2009 when we had a financial crisis and what happened to the revenue for the tax. Property tax appeals are going to start once home values go down as a result of the crisis. So we will be looking at a loss of revenue. I agree that we need to get more support and look at our options in terms of relief from the state government, from the federal government, and specifically the Federal Reserve talked about having a program that has direct relief for municipalities. Look, I think there's a lot of opportunity to continue to look for efficiency in the budget. I hope that we don't go right to the easy things that people typically cut when there's a downturn, things like libraries and after-school programs and sports. I really hope we don't have to go there. We could first look for efficiency, certainly use up the surplus that we have, potentially consider taking on some debt if we needed to avoid any kind of draconian cuts. But I want us to be really conscious, sober about this. We are entering a financial crisis where revenues are going to decline, and we need to have a plan now for how we're going to plug that gap.
Mr. Cotter.
Thank you very much. We're going to have to be realistic. Hope is not a policy that we can depend on. It is very important that we hold the line on municipal tax increases. That should be our North Star. Affordability is such a crisis here in town that raising taxes in a time of economic crisis would hurt so many Montclairians. Maintaining our AAA bond rating is also going to be crucial to make sure we are fiscally sound. But we also should be realistic about it. We are going to have a loss of revenue here in town. We're going to have to provide empathetic and decisive aftermath of this crisis. It will be critical for our state and congressional leaders to do their job to help us find reasons that we can make up for our municipal shortfalls. We have to think very hard about how we're going to support small businesses. We need to work with the BID and the Upper Montclair Business Association and other business groups in town to find creative solutions to help businesses survive. And then we also have to look deep into who we are as Montclairians. What we value in a municipal budget is what we value as a community. And when we make cuts, if we have to, I think we need to be empathetic in thinking about how those cuts are made. We're really in a tough spot, and it's going to take some real creative thought, some original ideas, some fresh perspectives for us to weather this storm. I think we can leverage the expertise of Montclairians across the spectrum to help us figure out the best path forward. I want to assure Montclairians that we're going to take you under consideration in anything that we do with the municipal budget. We want to make sure that your affordability is protected, and we also want to make sure that the municipal services and essential services that you depend on are constant. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lockman.
Yes, I agree. There's absolutely no doubt that we're going to have a problem with a shortfall in revenue as a result of the pandemic. I believe that there's going to be no sacred cows in the, excuse me, in the school budget, the municipal budget as well. The municipal budget is pretty flat, I guess. That's what we're hearing from the current counselors. However, what I would like to focus on is the county budget. 17% of our taxes are paid towards the county. And I believe it's like a black hole. You don't know what they're spending this money on. You don't know what kind of control you have over this. I really, it's a puzzle to me. And I've been to some freeholder meetings. I've kept track of what the budget is like. And I just wonder, I just feel like we give over our money and then we don't even wonder where it goes. I believe there should be more accountability and more observation of what goes on with the freeholder group. I'm wondering why sometimes it might not be a benefit to have multi-year contracts with our employees when you're tied into probably annual increases. This would be in their salary. This might be the time when an annual increase would have to be foregone in order to keep the payroll, keep people on payroll who otherwise might be furloughed. I also see, and this is another sacred cow, and I'm probably going to get shouted at about this, but we spend an awful lot on our fire department. There should be shared services among the three towns nearest, Bloomfield, Verona, and Montclair, with respect to fire services.
Thank you very much. Mr. Terry.
Thank you for the question. I was on the Shared Services Committee many years ago. I advocated for shared services then, and I think it's going to be paramount now. We're not going to get the money from the state. We're not going to get the federal dollars. This is going to be some very, very difficult times. There's going to be some hardships. These are the times when we're going to have to reach out to the communities around us, bring people to the table, put together a pandemic task force, work together with the residents and our mayors and our county government to find whatever resources that we have to solve the problems, just not here, but in the whole region. I think that, as indicated a little by some of the colleagues, that we can do this. This is not that hard. The forefathers here wanted their own groups: Montclair, Bloomfield, West Orange, Verona. But it's time to think out of the box how we can bring some of that together. This way that we're going to move forward to make sure that this place stays sustainable and affordable. It's going to be a difficult time. I've been through some difficult situations, 9/11, some other very tragic situations as a deputy chief. I know how to bring people together. I know our Congress people, our senators, bring them together and see if we can move forward, whatever they can provide for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now let us hear from you, each of you, on your closing statement, your views on why we should elect you. We'll start with Mr. Terry.
Thank you. I would like to once again thank the host for organizing this forum. In 4 years, I want to see Montclair that I love safer, cleaner, and move self-sufficient. We need accessible infrastructure, affordable living, and proper facilities for our senior citizens so they will stay in Montclair after they retire. We need to do more to protect the environment, including transitioning to renewable energy sources, using windmills, composting trash. We need to bridge the class divide by proving affordable housing, developers implementing safe and smart rent control measures, and providing equal representation for all people. We will only accomplish this if our township council is accessible, accountable, and transparent. I have the decades of experience and the skill set to provide the results for Montclair. That's why I'm running for councilor at large. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yakubellis.
Great. And thank you all so much. I wanted to end with a quick story. In 1998, I was discharged from the U.S. Air Force under the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy after being forced to choose between being myself or serving my country. I disclosed that I was gay, and I was placed with other individuals who were being discharged because of physical disabilities, mental health issues, or because they tried to commit suicide. They paraded us around the base for several days to be shamed and humiliated before sending me home. I'll never forget my drill sergeant telling me that I would never amount to anything. It started a lifetime of activism. And I won't go back and change history. It started with me leading the March on Washington 11 years ago, which resulted in the reversal of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. And in the years since, I've worked on passing marriage equality in New York and New Jersey, dedicated a lot of time to anti-bullying and suicide prevention measures. I've been an agent of change with a record of accomplishments in both the public and the private sectors. Been really efficient managing budgets of up to $550 million, 5 times the size of Montclair's budget. Look, I'm ready to bring generational change and a fresh perspective with experience to office here. And I hope you'll give me a shot. Visit peterfrommontclair.com to find out how you can get involved. And I'd love to earn your votes. And I also want to commend everyone who I'm running with for years of great service. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cotter.
Well, thank you to the League of Women Voters again for hosting this forum. My love for Montclair is boundless. Its rich history, its progressive ideals, and most importantly, its people make our community unique. Our challenge is to balance the need for growth and change with respect and consideration for the residents who have made Montclair such a diverse and dynamic place to live. I enter into public service with humility in the face of this challenge, and I will do my best to bring thoughtful, common sense solutions to the issues that come before the council. Through my neighborhood association and through the many organizations and committees that depend on my contributions, I've lobbied for pedestrian safety, traffic calming, affordability, strong schools, and led the fight for the thoughtful development of Lackawanna Plaza. I've worked tirelessly on behalf of my neighbors and community, and on the council, I will champion inclusion and continue to amplify your voice, Montclair. It would be my privilege to serve Montclair and to make my community proud. Thank you for your consideration and for your support.
Thank you. Mr. Russo.
Especially the League of Women Voters. I want to thank the League, which I've been a member of for 30 years, and AIM. AIM is an organization my mother, who just passed away, as you all know, about 101 years old, was a member of. So I have the experience working with our current mayor and council the last several years, and before that as your mayor during 9/11, World Trade Center tragedy in 2001. I believe I can provide stable leadership based on my extensive experience of not only 9/11, but all the years I've taught elementary school and college level classes in public administration. We're going to have some new members on the council filling some vacant seats, but what you do need in Montclair is the stability and the continuity that I can provide to overcome this great health and economic crisis that we face today. As a senior member on the council, I offer my long record of responsive service to Montclair residents and constituents. I will continue to fight for your interests and be a strong advocate for our town. I want everyone to just stay safe and healthy in the days ahead, because we'll all get through this difficult time together. I've decided to run again to continue serving, if you'll have me, in the position of council at large with my running mates on line C. Thank you so much, and please stay healthy and safe.
Thank you. And Mrs. Lockman.
There was an article today in the New York Times op-ed page about leadership. I was very pleased to see that its description of great leadership aligns with my values and principles and what I promise to do as councilor at large. I will treat all Montclairians fairly and with respect. To gain your trust and confidence, I will always be open, transparent, truthful, and ethical. I will never come across as having all the answers. I will tell you when I don't know something. I will call upon the help of experts as needed to collaborate with me to find answers. On any given issue, you will know where I stand, what I hope to accomplish, and how I arrive at my positions. I believe in research, data, and fact-based decision-making. The financial impact of this pandemic will cause us to re-examine town priorities and perhaps be the impetus for improvement in how your local government works for you. I want to be part of the team that shapes the future of Montclair. I ask you for your vote.
If we were live, I would ask everybody in the audience, and in person, I would ask everybody in the audience to applaud because the candidates were wonderful in expressing their views. Thank you very much. We're going to go now to the section for the candidates for mayor. So let me introduce both Sean Spiller and Renee Baskerville. And they will have, in that order, 1 minute for an opening statement. Mr. Spiller.
Well, thank you, and good evening, Montclair residents. I'm Sean Spiller, and let me tell you a little about myself and why I'm running for mayor of Montclair. My wife, Lauren, who's also an educator, and I chose to raise our growing family here because we know and love our town's rich diversity, its walkability, our restaurants and its energy, our beautiful parks, and of course, its renowned magnet school system. But Montclair is more than just a place. It's an ideal. It's the combination of everything that we are and what we stand for that makes us the envy of municipalities throughout the state. But progress is not just a word. It requires action. It's about leadership. And I bring that leadership of accomplishment to this position. During my time serving as Montclair's 3rd Ward representative, I worked hard to preserve the things that make Montclair special. Yes, I helped to make critical investments in our infrastructure, roads, parks, adult school, pre-K, and more, all while reducing our municipal debt by $60 million, improving our bond rating, and creating significant savings for taxpayers. But I also helped to lead the fight for earned sick leave for hourly workers. I stood up for all residents as a sanctuary city. I am committed to ensuring we remain affordable and diverse and led the fight in that area as well. I'm running for mayor to continue to invest in the Montclair ideal and to preserve the town we all love for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Baskerville.
Councilwoman Dr. Renee Baskerville, 3rd generation Montclair family. Too many of our families are struggling to remain in our township with high taxes and low affordable housing stock. Our formerly blue ribbon public school system has lost its coveted position in the top tier of New Jersey schools. The fundamentals of our local small disadvantaged women and minority-owned businesses are being badly shaken by coronavirus and the current recession. So too are many of our businesses and human needs services. We must balance commercial development in our township with community development and green acres and open spaces. We can turn these situations around with me in a leadership position. I have been dubbed as the voice of reason and integrity. I am your leader for a more perfect Montclair and effective new civil and respectful municipal government working with all Montclairians. We can't move forward by looking backwards, and we can't live in the past and expect to brighten the future. Please vote for line B for Baskerville, and B for unbought and unbossed.
Thank you. Now there is a question that was prepared for both of you, and we're going to flip the order of responding first. So Ms. Baskerville, you are first in this one. Since both of you have potential conflicts of interest due to your present or past involvement with school organizations, specifically Mr. Spiller, you as Vice President of the New Jersey Education Association, and Dr. Baskerville as an educator and health provider with the East Orange Schools District, how would you handle the appointments to the Board of Education and your participation on the Board of School Estimate? And you have 1.5 minutes.
Yes, so that question is, so I'm not my job with the East Orange Public School District is as a physician doing physicals for the early childhood department. I am a hourly servant, a consultant to the district. So I come with no conflict of interest. And certainly I understand that those are two of the most important responsibilities of the mayor to be able to appoint the Board of Education and also to be able to sit on and serve on the Board of School Estimates, as well as appoint two of those members. And I have no conflict of interest. I am looking forward to serving in that capacity, and I'll continue to provide physical examinations for the early childhood department as a consultant for as long as I'm invited to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Spiller.
Yes, thank you. As I stated before, my wife Lauren and I, with our young son and our growing family, we love this town in part because of our schools. I think schools are the hub of our community and certainly most communities. For me, I know that it is a big responsibility for government in terms of providing a great public school for all residents and all students. That's what I plan on doing. I am committed to appointing independent Board of Education members who have the best interests of our students in mind. We need a clear vision. We've seen a lot of turnover at the board for the last number of years, certainly at the superintendent level and business administrator level. And when you get that kind of turnover, you're unable to move forward with a single vision or a vision that helps to focus on all the challenges that our schools have, like all schools have. So I remain committed to making sure we put people there who are going to work together, who have a general shared vision, who are going to be committed to making sure that our students get what they need, certainly support the great staff that are working. As an example now, I mean, what other profession could really have gone to remote learning and given kids the great education that we're seeing now? I'm just amazed. So for me, I'm so proud of what our educators do. I'm proud of what our schools do. I am humbled by the fact that I have an opportunity to appoint board members who will continue the legacy, but also address the challenges that our schools face and make sure that they are stronger, even stronger than they are now moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is about seniors. In 2017, the Montclair Council voted in support to develop a dedicated senior center for the 7,000 plus older residents of Montclair, but that has yet to happen. How would you hasten this process so that this becomes a reality for this growing constituency? What do you see as the council's role in operation and funding of a senior center? Mr. Spiller.
Yes, thank you. I think it's important that certainly as mayor and as a council, we look forward to serving our residents at all ages and in any way we can. We know there are challenges when you talk about locations, when you talk about building new facilities, getting that done while also not increasing the tax burden or some of the other challenges that we have. But we all know we can also utilize resources that we have. There have been attempts to look at locations to see where we can get something done. Certainly as an opportunity with any new development going in that has to have a community component, we've worked hard to try and leverage some of those pieces to get a community center. I know that specifically when you look at the Social Security building that used to exist, the township bid on that property and tried to acquire that to have a senior center. But of course, being mindful of tax dollars as well, when we were outbid by a private entity, that didn't come to reality. So I think we need to remain committed to trying to look for creative ways to get it done that doesn't also add a huge amount to our tax burden, but also emphasize the importance that we know that our seniors, like all of us, play in being key parts of this community. So we need to continue to work on that. Public-private partnerships are certainly an option. We're going to have to probably rely on that even more in these difficult times ahead, but it's something that I know all of us remain committed to.
Thank you. Ms. Baskerville.
So we are living through the worst public health crisis in my lifetime, and we're also living through what is one of the worst economic crises that I can remember. So as we move through this storm of the coronavirus pandemic and we try to figure out what next and what our priorities will be, certainly seniors and all age groups are a priority to me. And I've served on the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee for at least the last 8 years, and I've enjoyed helping them to be creative to find locations. As far as allocating resources immediately to develop a new senior center, I can't promise that today. Certainly that would be a dream of mine. We have the Edgemont Pond, we have the Wally Choice Community Center, we have the Salvation Army building, we have a library section that has a wonderful senior center. We have 205 Claremont Avenue that hosts movies for seniors, and also an opportunity to do a shared service with the social services building on South Fullerton. So we have many options right now for the seniors. I'm so excited that they've been able to bring in new programs. yoga programs, chair exercises, reading, knitting, computer programs, different languages. So I realize that we're doing a lot. And we've also improved our easy ride capacity so that seniors now have the ability to get from one location to the next or to be picked up at their home and to travel to any one of the many senior that we have now.
Thank you. Next question. What is your opinion on the major redevelopment which has taken place in recent years and caused increased density in downtown Montclair? Would you support zoning changes to lessen the density? What is the resolution to the lack of parking caused by Montclair's density? And we'll start with Ms. Baskerville.
Thank you. So I'm very proud of some of the development that we've done in the last 8 years. I think we've brought some things in that were very needed for the community, and we've also set the stage for an opportunity to have an increased revenue. I am not one that is interested in extremely high density areas. I'm not one that wants to have 8 and 9-story buildings so that the sun will not be seen by people that purchase the home to do so. So overall, I'm looking forward to participating in the next 4 years. Now that we've built everything, in my opinion, that can be built, we're at the max. I'd like for us now to pay more attention to the environment. I'd like for us now to start identifying and keeping open spaces, perhaps finding a location to grow more trees, which is very important to me. But I do understand the importance of balancing things so that we can have thoughtful development, but we also have to preserve those things that many people came to Montclair for. Most of the people that I talked to didn't come to Montclair because they wanted inner city life. They came to Montclair because they wanted a suburban feel, but a little edgy type of thing. And that's what we have. We have a little village feel. We're still small enough for us to know our community members, and we have activities for everyone, for sure, not just with our restaurants. We have arts that I celebrate throughout the community, and we've made new opportunities for artists to come forward. So I'm excited about those things.
Thank you. Mr. Spiller?
Yes, thank you. Certainly when you look at the development that's occurred and coming in as a council member 8 years ago and seeing what had come up from the previous council, it was not too long after the Sienna and certainly Valley and Bloom was one that was approved before we got in. We certainly heard the criticisms that were there, and we've tried our best, certainly as we look at the new Seymour plan. And although I voted against it, I know that there are components in there now that we've put forward to make sure the aesthetics are better, to make sure the studies were done better, to make sure all of the pieces that you had heard complaints about were addressed as those things move forward. I also believe that we need to have that smart balance. Look, Montclair is a special place because of the number of train stations that we have, for example, and the number of people that want to be here for the easy in and out from New York City and other areas. We've got to embrace that, yes, but we have to do it in a smart way. The master plan, which is in place and has been for a number of years, calls for development up and down the Bloomfield Avenue corridor. I think much of that has happened, but to make sure it's a walkable storefronts where people will want to and welcoming feel will want to walk the town. I think that's what's occurred, and I do think it is time for that pause in terms of moving forward. But I think there's a real opportunity. When we look at that master plan, which calls for more parking decks, we are currently bringing 2 new parking decks online. That's going to alleviate the parking problem. I myself, living right by the library, know exactly what that's like when the Wellmont has a show, but having people be able to go directly to a new deck there, having those developers pay fully for another deck that they are building, that we, again, will own as a township and benefit from, and get another 400 plus cars off the street. That's an advantage, and I think that's what smart development is all about. So we've got to do it in a balanced way. We've got to be smart about it, but we've got to make sure we continue to embrace the draw of Montclair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. The council created an ordinance that with all the new multifamily construction, 20% is dedicated as affordable, but that hasn't happened with all the development, especially in areas with redevelopment plans. The council also recently adopted a rent control ordinance. Do you believe the 20% set aside should be enforced? And are you for or against rent control? Mr. Spiller.
Well, working backwards, I think easy to answer. Yes, I'm for rent control. I introduced the ordinance, so I guess it's hard to be against it if you introduced it. So, yes, short answer there. I'm for it. Look, we have to preserve our diversity, and that, of course, means socioeconomic as much as it means anything else. when we talk about affordability here in town, yes, it's about keeping those tax increases at 0% like we've done the last number of years and a number of years since I've been in office. But it's about making sure our rents are affordable and people have that security as they're staying here in town. When we go and we look at some of those other areas we talk about with affordable housing, I am very proud of all of us as a community that we are one of the few towns that has met our affordable housing obligation. What that means is we've also been creative. We said that for all new affordable housing coming online, we're offering that to Montclair residents and Montclair employees first. That, unlike any other town, is now an ability for people to stay here, to be able to afford to be here. When you look at the developments that we've had control over, you have to remember these economic development areas that have been created, again, were in place before us. But the ones that we've put down since we've been here, when you look at the Wellmont area and the other project, the other project that we've done redevelopment-wise, both include 20%, 10% for workforce housing in one and 10% affordable generally. But we're committed to making sure that we look at all the tools at our disposal to make sure Montclair remains affordable. That means the tax piece, that means affordable housing components, it means building affordable housing where we can from our trust fund. It means keeping rents down. It means a comprehensive approach, and that's exactly what we need to continue to do.
Thank you. Ms. Baskerville.
We have a technical issue with Miss Baskerville. She's going to try and call in.
Okay.
Say something? Hi, can I just say something? Or am I muted?
Sure.
By the way, it's Dr. Baskerville.
Right.
Okay?
Thank you.
If it's going to take a few moments for Dr. Baskerville to rejoin, then we may want to move on and come back to finish out the mayoral piece. But I leave that to Mr. Spiller. Would you be okay with that, moving on?
Sure. I'm not sure what number of our questions. Is it just closing left, or do we have any more questions, or what's the status after?
One more question and then closing.
Okay, I'll leave it to you. Happy to answer it and give my closing, or pause if that's what you'd like to do.
Let's give it 15 seconds. I think in the interest of keeping our audience, we're going to we're going to move to the individual wards right now. So let me tell you, are you there? No. Let me tell you what is going to happen. As you know, that there are 4 wards which have residents vote for candidates for each of those, depending on where you live. In Ward 4, there is only one candidate running unopposed. We usually do not include them in a debate because it is against FEC regulations. However, we decided to be gracious to Mr. Cummings and let him give a short 1-minute statement in lieu of the opening, and he will address us for 1 minute, and then we will go on to the other wards. So, Mr. Cummings?
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity for the League of Women Voters putting this forum on. I will say that I look very much forward to representing those in the 4th Ward and in the township of Montclair. And it starts with me with the names of people like Audrey Fletcher, Paul Yates, Bobby Riley, Jim Ramsey, Albert Pelham, Sandy Hunter, and my Aunt Gwen. These are individuals who I grew up. They all played an integral part in local government and also for young kids in town. That was something that benefited me very much. So when Dr. Baskerville asked me to run with her, I was not only honored, but grateful for the opportunity to continue the legacy that she has maintained the last 12 years in the 4th Ward. For me, it's really about being accountable, available, and also someone who's going to be a voice for the residents in the 4th Ward. I think this is an opportunity to serve all residents as well. And as someone who was on the Board of Education, I've probably been in the one other part that you can say is closest thing to public office in Montclair. So when it comes to working here and being a part of all the individuals and groups, I think that is something that I'm prepared for. So I thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to serving and working with the groups forward, and particularly my members on the Your Voice Montclair team. We're a very good organization together, and I hope we get the opportunity to serve you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure hearing from you. And due to modern technology, Dr. Baskerville is back. We will resume. So, did you hear the question, or were you not able to hear that? Dr. Baskerville, are you here? Are you here?
She is there.
Is she able to log in? In that case, one more time, we're going back to the wards. So we will present them in order. I lost her, I'm sorry. Hold tight, I'll be back.
That's great. I'm all good. So I get it.
And that way we get last licks for closing. For those of you still here with us, we are going to hear from the candidates. First for Ward, we're going to go through each ward individually. So Ward 1, we are going to hear the opening from John Hearn and then William Herlock. So Mr. Hearn.
Thank you very much. My name's John Hearn, and I am a candidate for First Ward Councilor. And even more important, I'm a Montclair dad. My wife and 2 kids and I love this town. We love the diversity of this place, the progressive values, the creativity, and the ambition of our people. And when I think about the ambition of our people, I think about how we like to strive and make things better. And that was one of the reasons I started to run, is because when Mayor Jackson announced that he would not be seeking re-election, a slate of people stepped forward saying that they were going to run. And I honor their contributions, and I appreciate their many years of great service to our community. But to me, a healthy democracy needs competition, and a healthy community needs fresh ideas. And many of these same folks ran unopposed 4 years ago. So I jumped in, and I was glad to be included as part of a slate of new voices, fresh voices on the Your Voice Montclair slate. And I'm standing here with you today to represent the good people of the First Ward who, like me, want, at long last, some action in this moment of uncertainty during the pandemic. And we also wish to have schools we can be proud of, and transit we can count on, and parking when we need it, and government that is responsive.
Thank you very much. Mr. Herlock.
Yes, thank you for sponsoring and organizing this event and for the opportunity to participate in answering your questions. My name is Bill Herlock, and I've had the privilege of representing the First Ward on the Montclair Town Council for the last 8 years, also serving as deputy mayor. I've been a member of the Board of School Estimate for the last 8 years. I'm the managing partner of Mueller Law, LLC, a national law firm with our offices here in Montclair. I'm a former adjunct professor of law at Seton Hall Law School. I also worked as a former prosecutor for the United States Department of Justice in DC. I'm born and raised in New Jersey, lived in Montclair for the last 22 years. I'm proud of the fact that my 2 children are graduates of the Montclair public school system. I consider myself lucky to live and work in our great town. I've worked closely with residents in the First Ward, groups in the First Ward, such as the Yanacall Brook Park Conservancy, the Friends of the Bonsall Preserve, the Upper Montclair Business Association, and the Friends of the Bellevue Avenue Library. I'm running for re-election to continue to serve the people of Montclair, specifically First Ward residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. We're going to be alternating order. What is the major issue you would like to address in your ward, Mr. Herlock?
Yes, thank you for the question. There are several issues that I'd like to address. First off is going to obviously be the pandemic and the recovery from the pandemic. Montclair is a resilient community. We will recover from this. And what I'd like to see done going forward is, first off, I need our public health department at 205 Claremont to go ahead and start stockpiling critical supplies going forward. Masks, gloves, gowns, and other things that we may need if this is to occur again. I would also step in and have a system in place for our finance committee, which I've been proud to serve on for the last 8 years. Monies must be set aside so that when residents are hurting most, we are able to defer water or sewer bills. We've been asked quite a bit during the pandemic whether or not we can defer the property tax bills. Unfortunately, that is not something in our prerogative. That is something that's controlled by the governor's office. So I would work with ways going forwards so that when this happens again, and it will most likely happen again, that we're prepared. Coming out of this, I would work with the Upper Montclair Business Association, as I have done. We'll find ways to alleviate parking and meter restrictions and costs going forward so that when the town is ready to open again, and it will be very soon, we're able to be in a position to help them the most and to be able to go forward when and if this happens again. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hearn.
This pandemic is the biggest crisis the world has faced since the Second World War. And here in town, we are not communicating as a government with any regularity, with any clarity, and that must happen. We must be taking action to coordinate the activities of good people, community organizations, and non-for-profits, and government agencies who are trying to help people. We need to help people who want to lend a hand find a way to lend a hand in a successful way. We need to raise what I'm calling a Sustain Montclair Fund to provide emergency assistance to businesses in critical situations. My number one issue right now is fighting the pandemic and helping us not just bounce back, but to bounce forward on the other side. One way we can do that is by focusing not just on cuts, as has been discussed before, but on how to contribute to the top line revenue by attracting great businesses that have small footprints and high value, by attracting more government dollars from Trenton and DC, and by making sure that our existing tax dollars work harder for us than they do today.
Thank you. In 2017, the Montclair Council voted to support a dedicated senior center for the 7,000 plus older residents of Montclair, but that has yet to happen. How would you hasten this process so that this becomes a reality for the growing constituency? And what do you see as the council's role in the operation and funding of a senior center? Mr. Hearn?
More than 1 in 10 of us is a senior. More than 1 in 10 of us is over the age of 65 here in Montclair. Seniors are a very core part of our community. And there's sort of a cliche here in town, right? When we display a sign saying that we're announcing that we have a child graduating from high school, we also put a for sale sign outside. And that's because of the affordability issue in this town. What has already been discussed is efforts to control rents and to control costs in terms of taxes. But we need to think about how vital and seniors are. A senior center could be a very valuable thing and worth pursuing. But I'm also interested in how these good people are living the best years of their lives very often, and making sure that every aspect of this community, whether it's dining or entertainment or arts, or is brought to them as easily and as functionally as possible, and that their lives also can richly impact ours. More opportunities to bring seniors, let's say, and youth together, the better. All studies show that they each benefit each other. I know that every time that my daughter and her class go and sing in the senior center right next to Hillside School.
Thank you. Mr. Herlock.
Yes, thank you for the question. This has been a very important issue for me for the last several years. I've worked very, very closely with the leaders of the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee, with Aging in Montclair and others to try to get a senior center established. We have looked at the options that are available with the United Way building and partnerships that can be done there. We've also looked at some of the other opportunities that may occur with some of the other programs and planning that we have going forward, with such things as the library, which, as everyone knows, is very close in proximity to the United Way building, and probably getting something together with shared space. This has been a project that we've been working very much on with the Finance Committee, which I've served on for a number of years with Mayor Jackson and my colleague, Mr. McMahon. So this has been a proposal that we've been putting forward. We've been working very much to make sure that the funds are available so we can have reviews, we can have architects, we can have planners, engineers, look at the space, make sure that the space is fitted appropriately for a senior center, being able to be close to the library like we are so that we can have cross-generational programming going on. The younger people can be tutored by seniors. There's quite a few things that we've been looking at over the years. I know there hasn't been a lot of discussion about this because we've been trying very much to get this thing moving off the ground, but there has been a lot of behind the scenes work that has been done. And we are committed to going forward on this, in addition to what we've established at Edgemont Fieldhouse and also at some of the other locations in town. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. The borough created an ordinance that with all new multifamily construction, 20% be dedicated as affordable, but that has not happened with all developments, especially in areas with redevelopment plans. The council also recently adopted a rent control ordinance. Do you believe the 20% set aside should be enforced? And are you for or against rent control? Mr. Herlock.
Yes, thank you for the question. Absolutely. We are definitely, I am in favor of the 20%. And in all the projects, despite what's being heard this evening, the two projects that this council was responsible for was Lackawanna Plaza and also over at the Seymour Street development. And both of those proposals, both of those programs have 20% affordable housing. We made sure that that was in there. We also have been very instrumental, as my colleague, Mr. Spiller, said, about a rent control ordinance that we recently passed. And I voted in favor of that. We worked together to make sure that we had our mutual interests taken care of in terms of what that ordinance looked like, so that it was fair to all Montclairians. Now, I know that there's been some issues recently, and there may be some court cases that come out as a result of this, but we are committed to the 20% affordable housing, and we're also committed to the rent control that we had proposed going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hearn.
At the core of this issue is about the value of diversity. The reason we're here is because we love the diversity of this town, diversity of income, of race, of religion, of gender, of sexual preference, of every kind. And in order to preserve that, we need to make deliberate moves in order to protect it. There's been a bill, an ordinance passed recently about rent control. It's unfortunate timing because right now in the storm of the pandemic, we have residents and we have retailers who are looking for a break from landlords who may or may not be able to put their mortgages in forbearance. That is the thing that I'm concentrating on right now. How can we help people weather this storm now? And also, though, I believe that rent control is maybe necessary, but not sufficient to achieve our goal of maintaining diversity. Studies show that control increases how long people stay in a town by 20%, but also diminishes the number of units available by a similar number. We also need to talk about credits, tax credits that we can help people use to stay in place.
Thank you. Last question. Montclair property taxes are some of the highest in Essex County. Due to the COVID-19 health crisis and the resulting economic downturn for both Montclair businesses who have had to shutter their businesses and property owners who have lost their jobs, do you foresee a tax shortfall? If so, can it be made up, and where would municipal cuts, if any, be made? Mr. Hearn.
Thank you. The first thing I believe needs to happen is we need to ask our town manager, who, by the way, has only been an acting town manager for 6 years now. We need to make sure we have a permanent person in that role. We need to ask him to talk to each of his department heads and ask them what it would look like to have a 10 or 15% cut in each business, in each unit of this entire government, and bring those forward to citizens of this town because and for their evaluation, because in the end, a budget is an expression of values of the community. And the more inclusive and open we are in this process, the more likely we are to get a result that we're not only okay with, but we're proud of. 8 years ago, after the Great Recession, we saw restructuring and layoffs and furloughs and even privatization, and all that needs to be on the table. But we also need to focus hard, as I said before, on attracting new sources of revenue to complement the inevitable declines in tax revenue, new businesses in town, new sources of subsidy from Trenton and from DC, and making our tax dollars work harder.
Thank you. Mr. Herlock.
Yes, as a member of the Finance Committee for the last 8 years, we've worked very hard to make sure that we get the numbers right, okay? The budget has not, as we have said, some of my colleagues previously, we have had 0% budget increase in the last 2 years. And for the history of our tenure in the town running the budget, we have had about a 1.2 overall average per year. That has saved us tremendous amount of money to be able to go forward. In addition, we had took the capital side of the ledger, which was at $223 million deficit with absolutely no infrastructure to show for it. The streets, the sidewalks were dismal shape. We were able to take that $223 million, reduce it to $160 million. By doing that, we saved $1.5 million every year in our debt service. Those funds are freed up to be able to do other things in town, to be able to address some of the crises that we are dealing with now. And by the way, this is not the first time that this council has dealt with a crisis. 3 months after we were elected, we were hit with Superstorm Sandy and the devastation that occurred. So we were able to get funds to cover those particular crises issues, and we will do so again in the future, whether that is from the state or the federal government. I am not willing to write off huge amounts of potential sources of funds from state or federal dollars at this juncture, and we will lobby hard to get what we are entitled to as a town. Thank you.
Thank you. And now it's time for your 1-minute closings. Mr. Herlock.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. There's still work to be done, but based on what has been accomplished so far, we have a firm foundation to accomplish much more in the future. Let us finish the tasks that we have started. Montclair has before elected totally new council members with unfortunate consequences. Consequences took us years to reverse. Now is not the time for on-the-job training. We need municipal leaders with proven experience who have been tested during crises in the past, who know how government works and have the relationships to work with state and county leaders, how to best serve you, the citizens of Montclair. For more information about me and my campaign, please visit my website, williamherlock.com, my Facebook page, and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. These sites are also important as I have been constantly posting every day important issues concerning the pandemic. I would greatly appreciate your support and your vote by mail on line C no later than May 12th. Thank you, and I hope that you and your families remain well during these difficult times. Good evening.
Thank you. And Mr. Hearn.
I have been so delighted to be part of this conversation. Thank you for having me. New times require new kinds of leadership. We are coming out of the biggest economic expansion in American history. In that time, property values have increased in this town about 25%. It is a great accomplishment that our current council has reduced our debt burden. And thank goodness they did, because we're going to need that as we weather a storm that we're in already. It is not true that we have not increased a tax burden in that time. We've only not increased the tax rate. When you take a even percentage of a larger number, and everyone knows their water bill is higher and their sewer bill is higher than it ever has been before. But that still said, I am a person who has been an entrepreneur and an innovation consultant, And I've succeeded in helping people and individuals and communities all around the world identify bold new directions, growth and success based in human values. Please look at Hearn for Montclair to learn more about where I'm coming from and where I'd like to take us.
Thank you very much. So those of you in Ward 1 have heard your two candidates. Now we're going to Ward 2. The candidates will give their opening statements and again, we'll respond to the same questions. We will start with Robin Schlager and followed by Chrissy Thomas.
Yes.
Ms. Schlager?
Yes. Thank you. Good evening. I sincerely hope that all of you who are watching at home are safe, healthy, and your family and loved ones are doing well. I want to thank our sponsors for creating this opportunity for the candidates to address Montclair voters. Many of you know me. I'm Robin Schlager. I am currently proudly serving the second ward as your councilwoman. My family and I have lived here for 28 years. My husband Ken and I have raised our two children in Montclair, both who went through the Montclair Public Schools. I've served as PTA president at Nishwain and Hillside Schools and spent 14 years as the director of the MFEE, the Montclair Fund for Educational Excellence. And currently, I'm the associate director of development with the Metro YMCA of the Oranges. Today in Montclair, we are experiencing something we have never expected to go through ever. Getting back to normal won't be easy. And more than ever, Montclair's residents need to be represented by expert leaders who know the inner workings of our government and can seamlessly get the town up and running again as soon as we are able. Thank you.
Thank you. Chrissy Thomas, please.
Hi there, I'm Chrissy Thomas, and I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters Aging in Montclair and the Montclair Local for their support of this important forum. I'm running for Ward 2 Councilor because in this time of crisis, Montclair needs fresh faces, new voices, and strong leadership. A full slate that has from day one the ability to do an amazing job without any conflicts of interest. I'd be honored to be a part of that change for the better. I've trained for this job my whole life. My education is in public policy, management, and the law. I'm a lawyer that fights hard for families. I'm a landlord that knows how hard it is to provide affordable housing in Montclair. I know firsthand that Montclair is a great place to go to school, raise a family, run a business, live, and even age in place. I grew up in Montclair. Over the past 50 years, I've seen Montclair go through a lot of changes, some good and some not as good. But right now, with my skills, we have a real opportunity to achieve excellent, equitable schools, thoughtful development, and socioeconomic diversity. For all these reasons, I'm hoping you'll support me as Ward 2 Councilor. I'm the change that Montclair needs.
Thank you. The questions are the same as you just heard, but I'm going to repeat them. What is the major issue you would like to address in your ward? Ms. Thomas.
The major issues in my ward are, as everywhere, taxes and education. There's also the issue of goose poop. There's also the issue of commuting safety. There's also the issue of seniors not being able to park at the shelter house. There's so many issues to address, but the major things that need to be addressed are the crumbling infrastructure at the schools and how we're going to get out of this economic crisis and still take care of what needs to be taken care of. Even while we're in this crisis, people are still trying to do their jobs and trying to pick a superintendent of schools. We need to also be working on a non-interim town manager. There's no reason that for the past 6 years we've had an interim town manager. We need a permanent town manager. We need to take care of the potholes on the street. We need to take care of the things that are bothering everyone in town, and that is the lack of a superintendent and the lack of leadership in the schools and the crumbling infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Schlager.
Thank you. The second ward is very unique as we have Montclair High School, Edgemont School, Watchung School, Renaissance School, the Montclair Co-op, and MKA in right here in the environs of the second ward. These schools and the surrounding areas need to constantly be looked at. They need to be looked at for safety, for our students crossing the streets, for our parking issues in and around drop-off and pickup of our schools. We also are very, very lucky to have Edgemont Park in the middle of our second ward. The park needs constant maintenance. I've been very pleased and happy to have worked with the Friends of Edgemont Park for the last 8 years. We have done a total overhaul of the park, new benches, lighting, paths. renovated the Park House with a wonderful grant from the Partners in Health. These are things in the second ward that always need to be looked at. I also believe that we need to take another look with a new traffic engineering, the corner of Watchung Plaza and Park Street. This is a very hazardous corner. I'm sure many of you have traveled there many times. It needs to have a new engineering report done, and it needs to be done immediately. We have a new little apartment building that will be done very shortly, and the traffic in and around that circle is problematic. It's also a thoroughfare for Watchung School, and also a thoroughfare getting back and forth to Montclair High School. So that's one of my big priorities. The other one is also our business area. Our businesses will need support getting back and running. Thank you.
Thank you. The first question is about seniors. In 2017, the Montclair Council voted in support to develop a dedicated senior center for the 7,000 plus older adults of Montclair, but that has yet to happen. How would you hasten this process so that this becomes a reality for this growing constituency? What do you see as the council's role in the operation and funding of a senior center? Ms. Schlager.
Yes, thank you. Yes, our senior population has been growing. I know that in the busing system that was put in from this current council in 2017, the bus ridership started at 249 and now is at 713 riderships. So that alone shows us that we have a lot more seniors in our town. I have recently, many months ago, but when I was able to get around, I visited in Cedar Grove, the most beautiful community center that was built, and it was built by Essex County. It is incredible. It's not only a senior center, but it's a community center. During the day, it's occupied by seniors and with lots of vibrant things for them to do. There's a beautiful kitchen. There's a fireplace that's run by a gas-powered fireplace. And in the evening, it's a community center for teens. And there's a musical groups at night. There's singing. It's just fabulous. So I plan, and I would hope as we go forward, to get Essex County in here and help us to help subsidize a community center, also, which would be a senior center. I also think that we can ask developers to chip in. They do that routinely. I know that they are going to be helping out with the circle and by Church Street and the fountain there. They're also helping to build a parking deck. So I would like to hold the developers accountable for that.
Thank you. Ms. Thomas. Ms. Thomas, I don't hear you.
Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I think that it's a shame that the Montclair Senior Center doesn't exist already. And it's been the talk of the town for a long, long time. I think it's great that the shelter house exists. I think it's great that that there are plans in place, but I think there are issues with parking. I think there are issues with there not existing already a combined senior center and community pre-K. I think that we should combine it with the Y somehow to make it more accessible and maybe to make it bigger so that it can serve the aging community so that they can age in Montclair and they can exercise in the same place that they play mahjong. There's so many things that we can do, and they've had so many years to do it. We've been too slow to get things done. And I know right now people are really worried about how they're going to stay in their houses during this crisis. I think that we need to help the seniors by doing more than just giving them lip service. When we repave the parking lot at the shelter house, we need to consider how people are supposed to park there. We need to consider how dangerous it is for people to get out of their cars.
Thank you very much. Next question is, the council created an ordinance that with all new multifamily construction, 20% be dedicated as affordable but that hasn't happened with all development, especially in areas with redevelopment plans. The council also recently adopted a rent control ordinance. Do you believe the 20% set aside should be enforced? Are you for or against rent control? Ms. Thomas.
I think that the 20% set aside must be enforced. I think if it's an ordinance, there needs to be no exceptions to the rule. I think that making the exceptions to the rule has to be done never. And if it is done, then it needs to be made up somewhere else. I'm also a landlord that owns a building in Montclair, 15 units, but I believe in rent control. I believe that it's necessary and it's a choice you have to make if you want to have socioeconomic diversity. I don't think it needs to be an unreasonable rule. I think that the ordinance that Renee Baskerville came up with that was ultimately worked on by her adversary and by the rest of the council that came about was a moral issue. And I think that it's a good thing that they finally came around to having rent control in Montclair. And I think that if there's an issue with it, that maybe it should go up for referendum again. It would overwhelmingly pass, I believe.
Thank you. Ms. Schlager?
Yes, thank you. I proudly stood by Sean Spiller as he put together the rent control ordinance and introduced it. And I did that proudly along with the council that I currently sit with. So I do support that without a doubt. I do also support 20% set aside affordable housing in new development. But I also think in some cases there needs to be a balance. If for some reason it cannot be done and it has to get cut a tiny bit, we have a trust. We have a developers trust fund that we have, that where developers make up for that by putting money into the trust, and the town uses that money for affordable housing in other areas. We often talk about spreading out affordable housing. I've heard that for so many years. And sometimes it's just we're just not able to do that. This trust allows us to do that, to spread affordable housing throughout our town, which is what we're about. And that also adds to our diversity. I also think that we don't use Home Corps enough. Home Corps is an incredible asset to this town. They're hard workers, well-meaning nonprofit. They've been here for a very long time. They have dedicated people behind it, and we need to take them up on what they have to offer. I also am incredibly proud that we are able to attain affordable housing for our municipal workers, so our police and firemen can live in this town.
Thank you. And our last prepared question. Montclair property taxes are some of the highest in Essex County. Due to COVID-19 health crisis and the resulting economic downturn for both Montclair businesses who have had to shutter their businesses and property owners who have lost their jobs, do you foresee a tax shortfall? If so, can it be made up, and where would municipal cuts, if any, be made? Ms. Schlager.
Yes, thank you. The one thing that I will work diligently to do alongside my council colleagues when we are elected is to put together a task force, a Montclair Economic Support Foundation. And part of that task force will look at the municipal budget. It will look at all cost savings and where we could find dollars to hopefully subsidize the small portion of our taxes that go towards the town. I hope that we're going to be able to do that. And I would hope that that would be number one on the list of the task force. Also, the task force, I hope, will be able to get a grant writer. We need to look at grants that are available in countywide, statewide, federal grants. I hope that we will be able to put on a full-time grant writer. And I know that would add an expense, but I think it would help. What we would gain from that would pay for it in the long run. I also think that grant writer can help our small businesses get up and running. Writing grants are a daunting task. I do it at the YMCA as a development officer. It's daunting and it's really difficult. By having somebody to to basically hold hands of businesses. I think that would go a really, really long way. I also hope to have a tenant support group in this task force that will help tenants who might not be able to, until our ordinance is put to test, they might need help and paying their rents as well. And this task force will take care of that.
Thank you. Ms. Thomas?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question because my audio went out.
Montclair property taxes are some of the highest in Essex County. Due to the COVID-19 health crisis and the resulting economic downturn for both Montclair businesses who have had to shutter their businesses and property owners who have lost their jobs, do you foresee a tax shortfall? If so, can it be made up, and where would municipal cuts, if any, be made?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I think that it's going to be hard for people to pay their taxes on May 1st. I think that it's going to be very, very difficult for people that have lost their jobs to pay the amount of money that they owe to the town. But I also think that it's necessary that people try and do what they can to pay what's owed. I think that the best way to look at alleviating the burden might be unpopular, but it might be to look at making pay cuts in the administrative salaries of some of the Montclair people that run the government, that we haven't had to run as much while we're all on lockdown. I think that there may be ways to bring new businesses in with that that can help us to raise revenues quickly. And with the delivery services, I think people have been trying to deliver food to Mountainside, trying to keep the small businesses going. Our community is rallied around most of the small businesses that serve food. We've been ordering in. We've been trying our best to support our town. And I think that we're going to have to do some hard work to get us back on our feet. And I don't think it's going to be easy, but I think that we can look at creative solutions that involved everybody taking a look at how we can make things better for all of us.
Thank you. And now it's time for your closing statements. We'll start with Ms. Thomas.
Just a second. Hold on a second. Okay. Ready?
Ready when you are.
Thanks to the organizers for the opportunity to participate in this debate and for their tireless work in helping to inform the electorate. And thanks to you, the audience, for taking the time to learn about us. If you want to know more, please take a look at yourvoicemontclair.com. For the past 8 years, the other side has had plenty of opportunity to improve your life in Montclair during a booming economy. And they're quick to congratulate themselves for not raising taxes. But that's really a false claim. Your taxes went up because your property values increased. During their time as council, green spaces have been shadowed by buildings and self-storage that aren't necessarily in keeping with the beauty that is Montclair. Over the past 8 years, we've had a rocky school experience with literally crumbling infrastructure. We've had an interim superintendent of schools and an interim town manager for 6 years. We deserve better. A strong governing body with a plan for excellent, equitable schools, thoughtful development, and socioeconomic diversity. A group as diverse as Montclair itself. I bring integrity, hard work, a strong education, and a lifetime of community service to the table. Montclair is a great town that's given me so much. It's time for me to give back to help it make it even better. For all these reasons, I'm hoping you'll support me as Ward 2 Councilor. I look forward to a beautiful future with you in Montclair.
Thank you. Ms. Schlager.
Yes, thank you. As a council person, the people I represent are called constituents, but I prefer to call them my neighbors. Over the years, I have helped hundreds of neighbors in the second ward resolve issues large and small. Four-way stop signs on the corner of Van Vleck and North Mountain, Brunswick and Central, Forest and Chestnut. They are there because I answered the call of concerned residents of these neighborhoods. I've helped neighbors with parking issues on Forest Street, uneven sidewalks on North Mountain and Gordonhurst, flooding problems on Burnside Street. Over my years of service to the community, folks know who to call in the second ward. Now as never before, my neighbors need to come together. We all must unite behind experienced, committed leaders to assure that Montclair returns to being a safe, secure, healthy, vibrant, and wonderful town that we love. From the words of Lyndon Johnson, There are no problems which we cannot solve together, and there are very few which any of us can settle by himself. That's my commitment, to help us solve problems together. To all my neighbors throughout the town, please stay safe and healthy, and I hope to see you all very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to go to the Ward 3 candidates. They're going to answer the same questions and give us their thoughts on opening and closing, why we should vote for them. First is Maggie Gerolman, and she will be followed by Lori Price Abrams. Ms. Gerolman?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, Aging in Montclair, and the Montclair Local for hosting this very important forum so that the voters in Montclair can become a little bit more familiar with us. I've been living in Montclair for 34 years as a renter first and as a homeowner since 1992. I hold a bachelor's degree and a master's degree from Rutgers University. My daughters both graduated from Montclair High School, 92 and 95, and my grandchildren presently are middle schoolers here in Montclair. My career has been in public education and in higher education. I also am a yoga teacher and a wellness instructor here in Montclair. I work with mostly the elder population, and I am an elder. I work at the Y, I work at the senior space at the library, and I work at the Montclair Women's Club. I am a founding member of the Undoing Racism Committee at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Montclair. And subsequently, after many years of advocacy, Dr. Belandi, the interim, took a leap of faith and instituted the Undoing Racism 2-day training as staff development. That was fast. Sorry. Okay.
Lori Price Abrams next.
Thank you for the opportunity to reach Montclair voters tonight and for all of you for sponsoring this event. I'm Lori Price Abrams, and I'm excited to be running for the council in Montclair. I want to fight to preserve what we all love about this town: the cosmopolitan vibe, the celebration of arts and inquiry, our excellent public schools, and diversity. My husband and I have lived in town for 24 years. Both of our kids are graduates of the Montclair Public Schools. Well, my son's not quite. I've spent 30 years and I bring public policy experience as a professional and in my roles in nonprofit boards. As a founding officer of Emerge New Jersey, an organization which trains Democratic women to run for office, I've helped launch other women into public service, and now I step up. I have 3 priorities in my tenure if I have the opportunity to serve. First of all, that we have to make our town more affordable. If we celebrate diversity, we have to make sure that people of all incomes and all means can live here. I want to make town more intergenerational. We have to celebrate the wisdom of our elders and help them who want to stay in place, want to age in place, to stay here. And lastly, I want to take my experience and my passion for the move towards sustainability to new heights, and doing right will actually save us dollars. Lastly, I want to be a responsive public servant to my constituents, and I look forward to serving with an experienced council. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. What is the major issue you would like to address in your ward? Ms. Price Abrams.
First, as I said, first and foremost, the opportunity to serve with an experienced team. And I want to acknowledge that the 3rd ward is actually a very big split between both the residential and the commercial district. The downtown district is largely in the 3rd ward. So I'm going to focus this response on really what I would say about the COVID response that we need to take advantage of in this challenging time. As you've heard, the council and the folks, many of whom I'm running with tonight, have been responsible for bringing down municipal debt by $60 million over the past 8 years. And that has put us in a better position to do that kind of response. We will be in a better footing as we have to make difficult choices. The AAA bond rating has moved up from the AA- that it had been at. I would take the opportunity to use the relationships that I've cultivated over my career in public service and public life with Representatives Payne and Representative Sherrill, as well as our state and county officials, to elicit every kind of grant and support and aid that we can bring to bear. As you'll have heard, or perhaps will hear later, our mayoral candidate, Sean Spiller, has talked about a COVID recovery task force. We talk about putting diverse stakeholders into a conversation, the collective wisdom of people who are running businesses, people who are nonprofit leaders, faith leaders, other residents, putting our collective wisdom together. What are the best ways that we can actually support? I think about a revolving loan fund that would enable those to carry forward, and that we all need to patronize local businesses to make sure that we can come back
Thank
stronger
you.
than ever.
Mr. Allman. Mr. Allman?
You hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. To answer your question about what you think the most important issue in the third ward is, I come from an activist background, and I walk around the third ward a lot. I live a block from Bloomfield Avenue. What I'm dealing with and what my neighbors and fellow residents are dealing with is some of the fallout from the overdevelopment. One of the things that I'd like to address is the speed limit on Bloomfield Avenue when things get back to normal, which is also a county road. I'd like to limit the speed limit on Bloomfield Avenue to 25 miles per hour from North Mountain Avenue to Maple Avenue. I would like to look at crosswalks in the area that are not adequate, stoplights that are not adequate. I would like to look at some of the construction that was done on Bloomin' Valley. The sidewalk, there's no room for a bus stop there. There's a bus stop there, but there's no room for a bus shelter there. Last year we had a flood on Bloomfield Avenue from Park Street to North Fullerton. I believe it's because of the impervious surfaces that we've created coming up the slope, coming up the hill. There you go.
And you'll be the first to answer this question. In 2017, the Montclair Council voted to support, to develop a dedicated senior center for the 7,000 plus older residents of Montclair, but that has yet to happen. How would you hasten this process so that this becomes a reality for this growing constituency? What would you see as the council's role in the operation and funding of a senior center?
Well, yes, we have senior centers in town that function independently of the council. So seniors are going to take care of themselves no matter what. I happen to work at the Y in the senior program at the Y. I work at the senior space at the library. There is the senior center, the Dewdrop Inn at the Wally Choice Center. There's the Mill Center at Edgemont Park. I think that the suggestion that we combine a senior center with a youth center as an intergenerational enterprise is probably the best option that we have right now.
Thank you. Ms. Price Abrams?
Thank you. You know, I talked about diversity being important, and I do believe the diversity of having an intergenerational community. Our seniors are very critically important. And I would set priorities again with those stakeholders from the Senior Citizen Advisory Council, AIM, and Lifelong Montclair staff. But I really want to focus on the housing element, which I think is so critically important. Some of our seniors who want to stay here cannot stay for affordability reasons, and I would want to make sure that we think about the opportunities of building new senior living residences, whether that's because we would include more affordable units for them in part, but also if there's not appropriate housing that meets their changing needs as they age. A second possibility is to think about potential zoning changes that would be important to maybe implement shared housing or different kind of maybe simpler ways that we could actually accommodate more seniors to help age in place. I want to point out that one of my career highlights some years ago was bringing in federal aging in place dollars through the nonprofit organization where I was leading a department. And we brought in dollars that helped age in place initiatives launch in 4 different towns. And some of that actually seeded groups like the philanthropic dollars, like through Partners for Health, that ultimately became the project that we now have in Montclair. So that experience, leveraging those kinds of dollars, leveraging that experience, I want to work with the seniors to design what's best for them. And I want to help them age in place here because we benefit from an intergenerational community.
Thank you. Next question is, the council created an ordinance that with all new multifamily construction, 20% be dedicated as affordable, but that has not happened with all development, especially in areas with redevelopment plans. Council also recently adopted a rent control ordinance. Do you believe the 20% set aside should be enforced? And are you for or against rent control? Ms. Price Abrams.
Thank you. I'll start off just to say, yes, I do support the rent control ordinance that was recently passed by the council and led by Councilor Spiller. Some of us were lucky to be born here, and others of us have gravitated for all the kinds of qualities that we love about this town. And I do believe that the importance of diversity means that we find a way to help people who want to live in this town afford to live here. We need, for means, people of different means to be able to stay in town. So I think the one possibility, again, was the rent control. Another would be public-private partnerships that perhaps with Home Corps or other nonprofits that we find ways to build new affordable housing, to turn over housing stock in creative ways. As far as the 20% set aside, I absolutely support it and want to see that happening even where we have areas in need of redevelopment. I know it's not required in those. I'd like to see it encouraged and supported. If we need to revisit our own zoning and preservation laws, we should do that. That's on us to actually reset the landscape if it doesn't do what we think it needs to do. I know we exact certain things from developers, these off-track kind of infrastructure investments. I think Sean made reference to it earlier with reference to the parking deck that we got a second deck out of the developer of the Seymour Arts Project. We should find other creative ways of getting those things in and ensuring that we bring as much affordable housing as we can to keep, again, the diversity of this excellent community.
Thank you. Ms. Drolleman.
Yes, we've been talking about the 20% affordable housing and rent stabilization in Montclair for many, many years. This is nothing new. I just wonder why we continue in this town to keep using the same developers, and those same developers continue to avoid adhering to the 20% affordable housing. Some people say they do, but I'm not sure that they really do. In terms of the housing stock for seniors in particular and for other people, I think that the zoning laws have to be looked at so that we can look into the possibility of retrofitting some of the older homes in Montclair so that they can accommodate seniors and families in a different way. I was a renter on North Fullerton for many years, and we didn't have rent stabilization. We didn't have rent control. But my landlord only raised the rent 4% every year. Things are different now. My increment could pay for that rent increase, but things are different now. We see rent gouging going on. I sincerely hope that this challenge to the rent control ordinance is going to be challenged by the town council, because if we don't do that, then Montclair is going to become a segregated community. Montclair will not have any room for diversity because these high rents are driving out economic, cultural, and racial diversity from this town. And all the people who want to come live here because of the diversity are going to come here and find that there's no diversity.
Thank you. The last question that we have is, Montclair property taxes are some of the highest in Essex County. Due to the COVID-19 health crisis and the resulting economic downturn for both Montclair businesses who have had to shutter their businesses and property owners who have lost their jobs, do you foresee a tax shortfall? If so, can it be made up, and where would municipal cuts, if any, be made? Ms. Drolleman.
Coming out of this pandemic, I don't think anybody has a crystal ball. I don't think anybody really knows what's going to happen other than us helping one another to get through it. Things could, there definitely could be a shortfall. And your question of asking where do you think that shortfall could be made up, we can appeal to the county, we can appeal to the state. Many people are applying for loans, this kind of thing. I'm used to my taxes going up every year. This is an unpopular position, but I would be willing to suck up a tax increase if necessary to maintain the integrity of the town budget.
Thank you. Ms. Price Abrams?
I'll use the opportunity to start by saying happy 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And I mention that because sustainability is something I have a deep passion about. And sustainability actually is about three things. It's environmental stewardship, it's social equity, and it's about economic opportunity. So I want to raise that here because there may be some dollars we can find doing the right thing by way of our sustainability initiatives. It's really a cornerstone of our identity in Montclair, and it might be something that helps save us as well. So I would bring renewed focus on top of initiatives we are proud of, the single-use plastic bag ban and our energy aggregation 5-town cooperative thing has put 40% clean energy into our system as well as saved us dollars, as an example. But an initiative I like to bring forward is about considering taking backyard composting and making it town-wide. If we can reduce what goes into our municipal waste stream, we actually save on the cost of hauling it and going to an incinerator. And the more we can take out, think about yard clippings, food scraps, and we separately collect leaves. If that goes off-site and we can do some saving there, we're going to actually save money and do right by the environment and all of us at the same time. Another initiative would be about electrifying our fleets. As we have to replace vehicles, school buses, other kinds of trucks that we own in town, we buy electric. And that will actually save us on maintenance. It will save us on fuel costs. And it will save individuals. As we use more electricity, the rates will go down. And lastly, let's find ways to put more solar installations. We can partner the township with schools, with congregations, and other kind of retailers and small businesses. We can find savings that will actually help us at a time that we need it most.
Thank you. And now let's hear your closing statements. You have 1 minute each, starting with Ms. Price Abrams.
Thank you again for this opportunity to speak with Montclair voters and for your sponsorship of the evening. I am committing to fighting for us all, to make our town more affordable, to make our town more intergenerational, and to make our town more sustainable, and to being a responsive public servant. I'm someone who does a lot of yoga. I think about balance, and balance is not a steady, fixed position. It's actually taking a posture and making an adjustment as you need to. I would bring that same discernment in governing. We need to take some actions. We may need to readjust. We will take steps. We will make adjustments. So I hope to have your support with an experienced team that I'm running with. I hope to be your next third ward councilor, and please support all of us on Line C to help you and help Montclair move forward powerful.
Thank you. Ms. Drolleman.
We started this campaign in the middle of a global pandemic. It has not been business as usual. I feel a little uncomfortable in this debate or in this forum with the idea that we're against one another, that we're against our opponent at this profound time. Here we have 13 people who love Montclair, who want to serve Montclair. And as I said before, nobody has a crystal ball, but we can see plainly the importance of good governance in times like this, from the federal level to the state level, to the county level, and to the local level. So maybe this is not the time for campaign promises. Maybe it's just the time for us to pool our resources. It doesn't matter who wins the election, whatever the outcome of the election is, we will all continue to pull together because that's who we are. So if I'm elected, I will walk the walk with you and I will listen. I may not have all the answers, but I will leverage the expertise necessary to explore problems together, to collaborate together. And my experience as an educator is to lead people to a sense of their own power, increasing the participation in local government, allowing people to have more access to the democratic process. I feel that line B, our slate, Your Voice Montclair, stands for that. Oh, that was perfect that time.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful here. It was wonderful hearing from the candidates. You have choices for one of each of the one of the two candidates in Ward 1, Ward 2, and Ward 3, and it was very enlightening. Now we're going to return to the mayoral section of our debate. Excuse me. And as we left off, I do believe that we were ready to hear from Ms. Dr. Baskerville about new construction. The council, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The council created an ordinance that with all new multifamily construction, 20% be dedicated as affordable, but that has not happened with all development, especially in areas with redevelopment plans. The council also recently adopted a rent control ordinance. Do you believe the 20% set aside should be enforced? And are you for or against rent control?
Yes, I do feel as though the 20% set aside should be enforced. That was something that was actually enacted upon under the leadership of Mayor Jerry Freed and the 2008 council, where they put into place that 20% of all new development would be for affordable housing. The difficulty is that after that time, people began to not enforce the 20% affordable housing and exchange for some different things for the community, infrastructure and other things, but they were not adhering to that. So finally, we recommitted and rededicated ourselves as a council to enforcing that. So I'm very much in favor of that. I think that it's very important that we maintain the socioeconomic diversity, the cultural, racial diversity in our township. These are things that people say they come to Montclair for, and certainly we haven't done the best job that we could in the past to uphold these things. So when the council decided to recommit to it, I was very excited. We began working on rent stabilization many years ago, most recently though in 2012, consistently up until the time that we began to work with TOOM and other people of goodwill in Montclair, and we were able to victoriously pass a rent stabilization ordinance that involved so many people, and I'm very excited about that. I think that there's work to be done on that. It definitely is not completely flushed out. I want to be a part of that.
Thank you very much. Next question is, you have 1.5 minutes each. Montclair property taxes are some of the highest in Essex County. Due to the COVID-19 health crisis and the resulting economic downturn for both Montclair businesses who have had to shutter their businesses and property owners who have lost their jobs, do you foresee a tax shortfall? If so, can it be made up, and where would municipal cuts, if any, be made? And we'll start with Dr. Baskerville.
And so I would never immediately turn to cutting services or cutting jobs. That would be a last resort. Certainly, I would look into some of the federal dollars that are available for specifically just for a time like this, for post-corona virus, so that we can maintain certain things. We've done such an amazing job in the last years with increasing the debt reduction and the municipal debt by 30% and improving our bond ratings and doing so many incredible things under the leadership of Mayor Jackson and myself, who also was privileged to serve on the Finance Committee with him, that we are financially sound. And at this point in time, we would take a look certainly to maintain all of the public safety jobs and celebrate them because we have to have them. And we would maintain all of the things that provide services for human capital. And those are areas that we definitely make sure that we did not want to touch, because that is the heart of the township, along with our small businesses. There's a lot of money out there to help maintain the small businesses. And so I think we just amp up our efforts to reach out to federal dollars, to do partnerships with people in other areas, and then take a close look with fresh lenses of people who have finance experience and some of our experts in the area to look what we have. Do we have any areas that we could make cuts on? But I think that we'll do a great job. I was also reading recently that there is something called a green stimulus plan for post-coronavirus economy. And that's where we've worked with a group of economists, professors, and other people to talk about how we can use this opportunity to help with climate change.
Thank you. Mr. Spiller.
Well, thank you. Our primary focus now is and must remain on preserving as many lives as possible. I know that each and every one of our fellow residents and neighbors is doing our part to make sure we flatten that curve. As Lori has noted before, I have been calling for the creation of a coronavirus task force. It's going to be made up of members from the small business community, retail representatives, restaurant owners, nonprofit organizations, residents, of course, government, for us all to work together to see what has to happen to get us through this crisis. We know that we're going to have to rely on our congressional delegation, Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill and Congressman Donald Payne, to assist in terms of getting as many dollars as we can from the federal government. I've called for the creation of an Office of Recovery, housed at Town Hall, so that when our residents or small business come in, they're going to know of the exact place they can go to find out all about the assistance that comes from both the federal, state, and local level. I've also called for the creation of an Economic Support Corporation, because we know there's going to be a need, as Robin noted, to get out there and search for grant dollars, to look for the public dollars that are available as well, to make sure we bring as much back as we can and to help our small businesses to be able to do that. That is what's going to be important to help lead us through this. Lastly, I've called for the task force to do a full analysis of our response to this pandemic to make sure we're best prepared to meet the next public health crisis. But look, leadership doesn't just start when you're in the middle of a crisis. It is absolutely because of the work that we've done to reduce our debt by $60 million since the time I've started on this council. That matters when you encounter situations such as this. When we talk about the fact that we put more dollars, as Mr. Herlock noted, into surplus, that matters when you come to a time like this. And while the council before us increased debt by almost $10 million, it wasn't just them. It was council after council that got that debt up to $223 million. We've been working to get it down. That's going to matter now, and that's going to matter in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. One last question. We okay? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
One last question. What can be done to save Montclair's history and character? Does the new demolition oversight law go far enough in preserving it? And what else would help? Mr. Spiller.
Yeah, thank you. Short answer is it does not. And it's always the difficult challenge when you balance the interest of individual property owners and what's allowed and what you also want to do in terms of preserving the character of Montclair itself. Certainly when we look at all the ways we can step in to help ensure that Montclair remains, yes, diverse, affordable, welcoming, all the pieces that I think draw people here and cause people to stay, as we work and fight for those things that we've all been talking about, that is going to help people understand that the very fabric that they're potentially at times tearing down is destroying what we are all here for. So that's an important piece of it. We do need to, of course, put forward the ordinances to be as strong as they can be. We know that the town manager stepped in to make sure that there could be no historic knockdowns. We know that we passed an ordinance as strong as we think legally as possible to help prevent further destruction of historic properties. But it is always that push and pull battle. I don't think you ever put the flag in and say, mission accomplished. We've got work to be done. It's a constant effort to make sure you maintain the community that we love. We all have a role in that. But I am confident that the actions we've taken, the actions we continue to take, will help preserve that Montclair ideal.
Thank you. Dr. Baskerville?
Yes. So certainly I do believe that, especially in our redevelopment area, there's much work to be done to make sure that the historic foundation maintains in these areas. But when you ask that question, for me, it's so much more than that. When you talk about preserving the history in Montclair, brick and mortar, yes, but the people and the lives and the families, they're even more important to me. The families that laid the foundation of the fabric of the Montclair that we all know and love, that we say that we come to Montclair for. Unless we really start to move forward with such things as the rent stabilization plan and try to make Montclair more affordable to families of diverse backgrounds, the history will be gone. The history is in the people. We have living history that we can go to as long as we're able to maintain the diverse populations of people. If you walk along any street, we should be able to celebrate the verbal and oral histories through the living legends, and we must do everything that we can to maintain the diverse populations that laid the foundation that we celebrate today.
Thank you. And thank you for your answers. It's now time for closing. So we will start with Dr. Baskerville.
So first, I'd just like to thank you very much and AIM and Montclair Local for affording us this wonderful opportunity. For the past 12 years, my constituents have helped me inform my decision-making in our monthly community meetings, and they have helped me to become the council's strongest advocate on the issues most important to all of Montclair, and to them, I am inestimably grateful. I led the way in workforce housing and creating municipal housing. I led the way in upholding the affordable housing ordinances and ultimately the rent stabilization ordinance. I fought along with community activists for safer streets, creating Montclair Safe, sustainability, and of course, for better schools. In our community, especially, we must continue to fight, as I have, to maintain small businesses and to make sure that post-corona, we do everything that we can so that they are able to stand afloat and continue to thrive and be the heart of our community. I have been leading the way with leadership that provided a consistent and non-conflicted leadership in the township of Montclair. The time has come now for new leadership that prioritizes Montclair's interests, not the power politics of statewide organizations and or county government, although I will continue, as I have, to interact with people in every level of government. We can be the place where we want to live. We can realize our highest aspirations and our full potential if you get into place people with new lenses. Please vote for line B for Baskerville, and I thank you so much for this incredible opportunity.
Thank you. And Mr. Spiller.
Well, thank you to the League and your sponsors, and thank you to everyone tonight for tuning in and engaging in this process. There is no doubt we are in unprecedented times. We are devastated by the loss of life that this pandemic has brought, and with each passing day, we feel the impact even more. We are separated from each other, and our community is hurting. But at the same time, we are getting through this together. We are a community of unlimited potential. I want to be the person to bring us together and lead us through this time and into a brighter tomorrow. I will need to have all of us, and we will need to all be working on this together. We will need to utilize the power of our diversity, our diverse experiences, knowledge, and perspective to emerge from this even stronger. I'm here for you. I hear you, and I want to be the person to lead us forward. I believe in us, all of us, from our newest residents to our lifelong Montclairians, from our grandparents to our grandchildren. I'm confident in our future. I ask you for your strength, your perseverance, and I ask you for your vote as the next mayor of Montclair. Thank you, and please vote line C.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure hearing from you. You were so good. I just almost want to move to Montclair. I would like to remind you that you have before you choices to make. You will be getting a vote by mail ballot. Everyone who had a previous election will have vote by mail because of the current health situation. You have before you the choice of mayor, either Renee Baskerville or Sean Spiller. You have two counselor at large positions to fill. Your candidates are James Cotter, Bob Russo, Carmel Laughlin, Roger Terry, Peter Yacobellis. For you in Ward 1, you have the choice of John Hearn or William Herlock. In Ward 2, Robin Schlager or Chrissy Thomas. Ward 3, Maggie Gerolman, Lori Price Abrams. And in Ward 4, you don't have much of a choice. It's David Cummings or David Cummings. So thank you very much. I just, again, want to thank you for your patience. And remember, when you get your ballot, fill it in and mail it out. And the next election will be primary on July 7th. So we'll see you then. And I'd like to turn it back now to Liz Milner.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you to the candidates, our co-sponsors, and the people behind the scenes who made tonight's forum possible. Ballots for the May 12th election are being mailed now, so watch your mailbox. Please vote in this election. Please return your ballot by May 12th because a healthy democracy depends upon the participation of its citizens. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Montclair area, Aging in Montclair, and Montclair Local, thank you for watching. Good night. Stay healthy. Stay home.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it over?